This is the base 64GB iPhone SE white in color with my SIM card in it, and I think I've used it long enough to tell you everything about it. So I believe that the people who will buy the iPhone SE can be segregated into two groups. The ones who will be switching or upgrading from an older iPhone, hopefully with the home button, because anything with a notch is still really new. And then the other group of people who have finally realized that Android is trash and they're wanting to escape from it. Now, if you are the person who is switching from an older Android phone, you belong to the second group. Chances are your current Android phone looks better and bigger than this. This is going to be a massive challenge coming from an Android phone. In fact, the first time you'll hold this, your first impression will be, "Hi koi chance hi nahi hai, not possible, not happening." But if you are switching from an older iPhone, this is going to feel like a massive software update because it's the same dimensions, it's the same body. I'm still using the older iPhone 7 case on the iPhone SE, but it feels like a massive software update because internally it's a massive improvement. But before I get deep into that, I actually want to quickly talk about the color of the phone. So I got the white color because I think it looks more clean and hence more attractive than both the red and black. Even though the iPhone SE has the same dimensions and body as the iPhone 6, 7 and 8, you can point out from far away that this is an iPhone SE, especially if it's in this white color. One thing that I noticed is that the Apple logo at the rear is now proper dark gray, which means it contrasts really well with the white and it's now visible from all angles. If you are wondering why am I mentioning this, it's because the Apple logo in the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max, the white colored iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max, was muted. It was almost invisible from certain angles. I don't know if it was because of the frosted glass at the back, but I mentioned this in my iPhone 11 Pro Max unboxing video 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, and I'm glad Tim Cook watched that and got this fixed. It's really appreciated. But that's all I'm going to talk about the design because the rest all is really familiar, including the display at the front. Before I get to the display, I actually want to point out that I'm glad they went with the black front even on this white variant, because with a white front, there would be a black border that keeps shining through and it's really ugly. In a black front, it mixes up with the body and you can't really see it. As far as the display is concerned, it still got the same pixels per inch as the iPhone 4, same brightness as my iPhone 7, same colors, same viewing angles, same everything, which means that this is not the best display you can get for 40,000 rupees. In fact, every other phone in the 40,000 rupee price range has a better display than this, has a better, higher resolution, much brighter, and even high refresh rate display than this. But I do think it's the right decision to go with a lower resolution display in this body because of the battery life. Not that the battery is terrific or anything, but I mean you still won't get through an entire day if you play PUBG. But I think it could have been worse had this been a high resolution display, because after all this is a really tiny and very thin phone. There's not enough space for a bigger battery inside. So this is not the best choice when it comes to the display, but I think it's the right choice. And I know it's a great display because once you start using it, you just forget about it. And I think that's definitely better than a really high-end OLED display with 120 Hz refresh rate that just develops banding issues in the middle of the usage. So I think this is fine. Once you start using it, you forget about it. I would have said the same thing about the size also, but that is extremely subjective. Most of the people will actually find this really tiny. Plus, considering iOS 14 and the widgets that it brings along, the size is a bit too compact. I actually installed the developer preview on my iPhone 7 and even did a video on it. Check it out. And I found adding widgets made everything really hodgepodge because widgets do take up good amount of space and this is a tiny display. There is no hack to fix it. It's hardware, it's permanent, and you will have to live with that. So keep that in mind before you make the purchase. The next thing that I want to talk about is the performance. The performance is the reason why this felt like a massive software update coming from an iPhone 7. It's a noticeable difference. The app load up times are better. The RAM, the memory is really good, meaning when you double press the home button and switch to another app that you opened some time before, most of the times it opens in the same state as you left it in. The iPhone 7 just fails to do that now. But the most improved aspect in terms of performance, I believe, is gaming. PUBG on this is a flagship experience. I play on HDR Extreme and I have not noticed a single frame drop. The size can be an issue, but I did a dedicated video on playing PUBG on the iPhone SE in which I spoke about all these issues, and I highly recommend you check it out after watching this video.
Clear! Cover me!
Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about is the camera. It's not a very fancy setup, there is no ultrawide, no telephoto, nothing, but the images in daylight are so good. I mean, you will notice this when you switch from an older iPhone. I compared the images of the iPhone SE with those of the 7, and in some shots there was a very drastic difference in the dynamic range. The iPhone SE also recorded better video compared to the iPhone 7, even though it's the same resolution, but iPhone SE has stereo sound, and that makes a massive difference. The third difference in the camera was the low light performance. This time, surprisingly, the iPhone 7 produced better lit shots. I didn't understand this at first, so I tried again, but I actually got the same results. But the last difference in the camera was actually in the app. The SE's camera app just has a bunch of more features. The most important being the ability to change the aspect ratio of the image. You could also change the video resolution and format in the iPhone SE's camera app itself, but now with iOS 14 update, even the iPhone 7 will be able to do that, which is pretty convenient. But that's all. That's the story of the iPhone SE. I think Dave Lee said it the best to conclude it, that most of the other phones, both cheaper and expensive than the iPhone SE, have something fancier to offer, like a 120Hz refresh rate or a 108 megapixel camera. But in that process, to attract all the consumers, but in that process, they just forget on the basics. They miss out on the basics. The iPhone SE, this phone, is all about the basics. It's a no-nonsense phone which will be supported by Apple for at least 5 years in the form of software updates. And that is unheard of in the industry. But I personally, I'll not be switching to the iPhone SE. In fact, this is not even the iPhone SE. This is the iPhone 7. I've already sold the iPhone SE, and that's because, as I said, these phones last really long. The iPhone 7 that I'm using right now is almost 4 years old now, and I don't want to get stuck with a phone which looks exactly the same for another 4 years. I'm almost bored with this, and I want something that provides me both the fancy stuff and also nails the basic, and that's going to be expensive, but I'll wait for it. But that's about it. That's my iPhone SE review, or whatever you like to call it, my experience with the iPhone SE. I like to give a huge shout out to Anil Pal, who was generous enough to buy the iPhone SE from me after I was done covering it on the channel, or which is right now, but I sold it. He is great because he allowed me to not get stuck with it. I'll leave his Instagram linked below. I highly recommend you follow him. He's a great guy. But that's it. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to do the needful, and I'll talk to you in the next one. I'm gonna have dinner now. Bye.